Hello and welcome to the PCS Electronics test bench. Today on the bench we have another Xantrex 458. This one's a 2500 model, but we're not going to go in depth into the inverter part of it today. We are going to look at just to answer a question that I get all the time, which is, why is my unit not putting out any power? So people call me and say, you know, I've got one of these units. It's either a Xantrex Freedom 458 or it's a Heart Interface Freedom Combi, and they're saying it's not putting out any voltage. So in this video we're going to cover what you need to check, the main reasons why you're probably not getting any voltage. So here we go. Okay, so quickly, the three ways to turn this unit on and off. We have the on-off buttons on the front here, and sometimes those don't work, and I'm going to explain why. You can put a switch here in this port, a little 2-pin jumper, and you put any kind of a switch on it, and you can turn the unit on and off from that port. Or of course you have the remote panel, and you can turn the unit on and off there. So those are the three ways. Number one to check are the breakers on the front of your inverter. You have, on some of these units, you have output breakers. Some don't have these, it depends on the model. And you got an input breaker. This is just a push button, and then these are regular switch breakers. So you want to make sure they're turned on. If one is in the trip position, then you blow circuit, and you'll have to figure out why. You can try resetting it and see if that brings your power back. So that's number one to check. You got, some of the units have breakers, some don't. So you have 1, 2, 3 possible breakers you need to check. Okay, so you've checked your circuit breakers and your panels and so on, and everything's just dead and you don't know why. You need to check your voltage here at your battery terminals. So if you have a voltmeter, put it on DC volts and check just right here at the battery terminals and see if you've got your 12 volts. This is a 12 volt inverter, so we got to have 12 volts here. Whatever your battery voltage is, that's what it should be. If you don't have 12 volts there, then obviously that's why it's not working. So what you need to look for is your fuse. And your fuse is going to look like one of two things. It's either going to be a Class T cylinder fuse like this, and they have different sizes, but it'll still be this shape, and it'll be in a holder, something like this one here, and it may have this cover over it. So you'll be looking for this cover, and you pull that off, and then there's this cylinder fuse, and you'll have to check that fuse. The other possibilities, you may have an A&L fuse like this. This will be in a holder, different type of holder, but that's the other type of fuse that they use on these inverters. And if you have your voltmeter, you just want to check. I mean, you can take the fuse out and you can, you could beep it with the meter. This is the classic. Check the fuse with the meter. So that fuse is good. But you don't have to take the fuse out. There's two ways you can do this. You put it on a voltmeter DC setting, and what you want to do is, at your fuse holder, of course you'll have the fuse in it, you just go to the ground terminal, either here or on the batteries, the negative terminal, and you just measure on both sides. And if you got 12 volts on one side, not the other, then you know you have a blown fuse. So you need to check the fuses. Okay, so another possible reason why you are not getting power is that your unit is in the search watts mode. The search watts mode is a power saving mode where the unit will just put out a single pulse looking for a load, and if it doesn't see a load, then the unit will just sit there and pulse, and it won't put out a constant 120 volts. Right now this unit is actually running in search watts mode, and on the display it looks like it's running. Okay, the light's on. you do notice one thing that should be a warning here. You notice it's blinking. Normally this light wouldn't be just solid green on, but that blinking tells me it's in search watts mode. The other way I know it's in search watts mode, of course you probably don't have an oscilloscope, but we can look at the oscilloscope here. And on the oscilloscope, you see a single pulse right here. That's what it's putting out, because it's looking for a load and not finding it. What's interesting about what's going on right now on my bench, a couple things. One, if you look at my voltmeter here, it's just dancing around because it just sees that one little pulse. It doesn't see the 120 volts. What's interesting as well is that my microwave oven, which I keep plugged in over here, it is not on. Even though it's plugged in, the unit is not on, because the microwave oven has a standby circuit that doesn't pull enough power to trigger the search watts mode into running. The only way to get it to trigger is to plug in usually a real light bulb, some kind of power source, something like this, that will actually draw some current and the unit will turn on. So on my bench here I have a load box, and I've got all kinds of light bulbs in my load box over here. So if I flip one of these on, you see it lights up. I can go up here to my microwave, and now it's on. Down here on my meter, I've got 120 volts. And on my scope, I now have the full output waveform. The remote is now showing a solid green light that the inverter's on. Okay, so that is a reason why you may not be getting power out. It's there waiting for a load. So what you need to do, if this is happening, or even if you're not sure if it's happening or not, if you're not getting power out of your Xantrex or your Freedom or your Heart Interface, what you need to do is you need to go on the remote here, and you need to go into setup and take it out of the search watts mode. I'm going to show you how to do that. So it doesn't matter if the inverter's on or off. I can go into setup and just hold the button, and you'll see the lights change. Okay, the lights changed. I got a light over here I didn't have before. This one went down to the bottom. So this setup is blinking, and it will stay in setup for a little while, then it'll drop out of setup. So again, push it, hold it, wait for the lights to change. If you see this LED right here anywhere other than the bottom, then you're in search watts mode. You need to push the invert button until you see it at the bottom. What it does is it goes to all these different settings. So at the bottom it's off. It'll search for at least 10 watts, 25 watts, 50 watts, and so on. So you need it to be all the way at the bottom, which means search watts is off. Then let the setup time out. And after it times out, it goes back into normal mode. I can turn the inverter on at that point, and it just comes on, and it doesn't care if it has a load or not. So now if you've checked everything and you still don't have power coming out, let's say you have the situation where the remote's just dead, you got no lights on it at all, and possibly you can turn it on maybe with a switch. If you try a switch in here, it'll turn on, and you might be able to turn it on from the front, but you never get any lights on your panel. There is something you can try to bring the panel back up. what you need to do is actually put a switch on your port here. If you don't have a switch like this, you need to short those 2 pins that are inside the port. And to do that, what I use is a little 2-pin shunt jumper. It's something very common in electronics, but you probably don't have one laying around. You might. I'll show you where you might have one. It's just a little tiny little jumper, 2-pin jumper, and this goes inside and shorts those 2 pins together. And what that does is it will actually activate the circuit that powers up this panel here. So to install that, you just need some needle nose pliers or some good fingers. I can't get my fingers in there, so I get a little needle nose plier, and I actually just put that little jumper in there on those 2 pins. So now that's permanently shorted, and that will actually power up your remote. You may have to push the invert button to get it started. And from that point, you can just leave it in there, and now your remote panel will work. So I have seen that on more than one unit, that it's a way to bring your panel back up if it's not working. Now if you don't have one of those little shunt jumpers, someplace you can find them is on an old computer motherboard. If you have an old computer motherboard laying around somewhere, these things are very common on these boards, and possibly some other types of boards, but they'll have these little pin headers on the board itself, and you'll find these little jumpers, you know, on those pins. Just pull one off, throw the board away because you don't need it anymore, and you can use that to short your pins. Okay, I mentioned this problem before with this button on the front here. If this button on the front doesn't work, if you're maybe a qualified technician and you want to go in here and fix this button, what you need to do is you need to get in behind it, and inside, right in front of the button itself, there is a little piece of foam. Looks like that. Normally it's glued to the little membrane, or the membrane panel, and then when you push the membrane button up front, the foam squeezes and pushes the button. Well, after a while this foam just dries up and collapses, or sometimes I've seen them just fall out, and then this button doesn't work anymore. So what you need to do is just get yourself another piece of foam. This is just a scrap piece of foam from something else, and I just stuff it in there to replace the one that fell out. Or if it's collapsed, then I'll pull it out and I'll put something new in there. And then once you've replaced that foam, then that button should work again. So a quick review of everything. If you have a unit that's not making power, you want to be sure you turn it on, of course. Make sure you try the button on your remote. Try putting a switch here on the switch panel. Try the front button on the front. Check your voltage at the battery terminals here. Check your fuses, your battery fuses, and check your breakers on the front of the unit. This unit doesn't have any breakers, some do. And once you've checked all of that, you've tried every trick in this video, check your search watch setting, and then at that point the unit may need to be repaired. Okay, so there you have it. Things you need to check, hopefully before you call me, to see why your inverter is not coming on. I do get a lot of calls on this one issue, so if you are not getting power out of your inverter, please check all these things first. If you've checked everything and it's still not working, then by all means give me a call and I'll try and help you. and you can even ship us the unit and we'll repair it for you. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.